Welcome, everybody. So glad to be here with all of you tonight for the 8th night in a row. 8 nights in a row we have been streaming. 8 nights in a row. So glad to be here with all of you. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. Let's do it one more time.
The American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, everybody. I am so glad to be here with all of you tonight for yet another one of our late night conversations. And, we just keep going. It is really, really, really great to be here with all of you. So for those of you who may not be familiar with the way we do things on these streams, just a quick rundown. I give opening remarks, which is just me talking about what I want to talk about. And then from there, after I give my opening remarks, we do the roll call. And I call you all out as I see you, names and locations. We find out who is on the other side of the camera, who's watching. And it's always very interesting to see who is watching. And then after that, I answer your super chat questions for the rest of the night. So if there is something that you would like me to talk about in the second half of our show, by all means, send me a super chat. Shoot a super chat my way. I will type it down as we do, and then I will answer it in the second half of our program. That's the way it works here. So I'll be writing super chats down as we go. Let's make the second half of the show lively. Your questions, give me something to respond to. And now I'm going to jump right into it. Folks, Comrade Jyoti Brar, the leader of the Communist Party of Great Britain, Marxist-Leninist, who was our beloved guest at our conference. She's interviewed in the documentary down below, the great film that Peter Coffin made about our recent conference. Just an amazing anti-imperialist Marxist leader in Britain, Jyoti Brar, amazing comrade Jyoti Brar, very good friend of the Center for Political Innovation, one of our most fraternal international comrades. She made a comment at the conference in her very dynamic presentation. She made a comment. She said, if you've read Marx and you've read Lenin, that's great. Go read it again. And if you read it, go read it again. And go read it again, and go read it again, and go read it again, and go read it again. And I was sitting in the audience, and I smiled a little bit. And I've thought about that a lot. If you've read Marx, you read the Communist Manifesto, now go read it again. You read Lenin, you read The State and Revolution, you read Imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism, you read What is to be Done. Great, now go read it again. You've read Stalin, The Economic Problems of Socialism in the USSR. You've read Marxism and the Problem of Linguistics. You've read Foundations of Leninism. All right, that's great. Now go read it again. You've read On Contradiction, Talk on the Question of Philosophy by Mao Zedong. Now go read it again. Now go read it again. And I thought about that, about what she said about go read it again. And it occurred to me that every time you read something, you are putting a new pair of glasses on. Every time you read something, different things are going to stand out to you. Every time you read something, it's going to strike you in a different way. Every time you read something, it's going to speak to a different part of you. And that is why it is important, if you consider yourself to be a communist, it is important for you to go read it again, because what strikes you the first time you read it, you're going to miss another time. And what strikes you this time you read it is going to be things that you missed before. And there are so many things that are so essential to what Center for Political Innovation promotes and teaches, that are right there in the Communist Manifesto, in the Little Red Book. But because people don't read it with proper understanding, because people don't read it in the context of doing what we do, it goes right over their heads. The Communist Manifesto is not a very long document. It's pretty short, 4 chapters. And there's stuff that we believe, that we talk about, that we promote, that is right there in the Communist Manifesto, that every one of these woke idiots on the internet who claims they know way better than we do, claims we must be stupid. It's right there. It's right there. They read the same text that we read. They open the same book that we read. But for some reason, goes right over their head. And many of the quotations that I use in my new book, Where is America Going?, are not from obscure, unheard of Marxist texts, or not from, obscure reinterpretations of letters. They're not from volume 4 of Capital. They're right from the Communist Manifesto. They're right from Socialism, Utopian, and Scientific. They're right there in front of your face if you choose to read it, but people don't. They skim it once to say they've read it, and then they watch Vosh videos. They skim it once to say they've read it, and then they watch Philosophy Tube. They skim it once so they can say that they've read it, and then they listen to, who's that doofus, the Jacobin guy? I don't even remember his name. Who's the Jacobin doofus? I don't even remember what his name is. The one who's the big Marxist academic who appears in ContraPoints videos and stuff. I don't even remember his name. That doofus. Right? It's not from obscure texts. But because there is such an effort to use our movement for evil, people crack open the Communist Manifesto. They say, history of all hitherto existing society is class struggle. A specter is haunting Europe. The specter of communism. Workers of the world unite. Okay, I got it. And they shut it. They shut it. And they don't digest the contents of what the Communist Manifesto says. And thus, they are able to think they are communists. They are able to think they are revolutionaries. They are able to go along with the woke agenda. They can say, sure, I read it, but they've never tried to digest it. I'm going to read you just a few quotes. Just a few quotes that are right there from the Communist Manifesto that are solid, 100% confirmation of what we believe. Right? The Communist Manifesto. In chapter 1, it says, "It is enough to mention the commercial crises that by their periodical return put the existence of the entire bourgeois society on trial, each time more threateningly. In these crises, a great part, not only of the existing products, but of all the previously created productive forces, are periodically destroyed. In these crises, there breaks out an epidemic that in all earlier epochs would have seemed an absurdity, an epidemic of overproduction. Society suddenly finds itself put back into a state of momentary barbarism. It appears as if a famine, a universal war of devastation, had cut off the supply of every means of subsistence. Industry and commerce seem to be destroyed. Why? Because there is too much civilization, too much subsistence, too much industry, and too much commerce. The productive forces at the disposal of society no longer tend to further to the development of the conditions of bourgeois property. On the contrary, they've become too powerful for these conditions by which they are fettered, and as soon as they have overcome these fetters, they bring disorder to all of bourgeois society and engender the existence of bourgeois property. The conditions of bourgeois society are too narrow to comprise the wealth created by them." That's from the chapter 1 of the Communist Manifesto. He says the problem with capitalism is that it creates productive forces, it gets good at creating products, and in this absurd system where profit dictates production, where the banks and the factories and the centers of economic power operate to make profits for private owners, we have a problem that doesn't make any rational sense, which is people getting poorer because more wealth is created. Poverty created by abundance. Poverty amid plenty. People get poorer because there's more wealth. Overproduction. This is basic Marxism. And none of these idiots on the internet, none of the internet Marxists know anything about overproduction. They think overproduction means, oh, everyone has too much stuff. That's like bad for the environment, man. No. No, no, no. The problem with capitalism is that as abundance is created, the result is poverty. Poverty amid plenty. The coal miner's riddle that I've told on here many, many times. The little boy says to the father, "Why is it so cold?" The father says to the boy, "Because we can't afford any coal to heat the stove." The boy says to the father, "Why can't we afford any coal to heat the stove?" He says, "Because I lost my job at the coal mine." The boy says to the father, "Why did you lose your job at the coal mine?" And the father replies, "Because there is too much coal." That is the built-in problem of capitalism. That the better they get at making shit, the fewer people they hire, and the more shit they produce, the more unemployment there is. Self-driving cars would lead to riots in the streets. Efficiency in the means of production, technological advancement leads to greater poverty. Poverty created by plenty. Poverty created by abundance. That's right there in the Communist Manifesto. Back in 1848, when Karl Marx was in his 20s, when he was just starting out, that was one of the first things he talked about. But yet there are all kinds of people who think they are communists on the internet. Thousands of them who have no conception, no understanding of this problem. They have no clue what overproduction is. I talk about overproduction and they go, "Oh, but I thought you were against degrowth." That has nothing to do with overproduction. Overproduction is a situation where growth leads to poverty. Getting rid of capitalism overcomes the problem of overproduction, so growth can be unlimited. They have no idea what this means. They have learned their Marxism from Jason Hickel. They have learned their Marxism from Jabba the Bosch. And they have no idea. And so when you tell people, go and read it again, it's really, really important. And in order to put this book together, I had to go and read it again. I had to go and read a lot of things again. I had to read Anti-Düring. I had to read Socialism, Utopian, and Scientific. I had to read the Communist Manifesto. I had to read a lot. And when I read it again, I noticed that things stood out to me that had not stood out before. That in the context of building our organization, in the context of organizing and coming together, certain concepts that just went right over my head before now make a huge amount of sense and are vitally important. And I will read you some more. Again, right here in the Communist Manifesto. What does Karl Marx say? How does he say what socialism is? What is the definition of socialism according to the Communist Manifesto? What is the definition of socialism? What is the definition of socialism according to the Communist Manifesto? What is it? What is it? I'm just going to read you the text. I'm going to read you the text because, again, it's pretty gosh darn important. The proletariat raises itself to the level of the ruling class and wins the battle for democracy. It then centralizes the means of production into the hands of the state. All right, I can't even find it in this text. All right, here, we'll just pull it up on the computer. Don't think I quote that particular part in the book, but that's okay. Communist Manifesto, Chapter 2. The proletariat, as we have seen above, the first step in the revolution by the working class is to raise the proletariat to the position of the ruling class and win the battle for democracy. The proletariat will use its political supremacy to wrest by degree all capital from the bourgeoisie and centralize all the instruments of production into the hands of the state. What does centralize mean? Does centralize mean worker cooperatives? Is that what it means? Centralized, does that mean worker cooperatives? No. It doesn't mean independent factories where they're competing with other factories, but the workers share the profits. No, it means 5-year economic plans. It means a state central plan. Centralize the means of production. Centralize all instruments of production into the hands of the state. And then what? To increase the total productive forces as rapidly as possible. Does that mean to degrow? To make everyone poorer because capitalism means that everyone has too much stuff? No. It means to raise the productive forces. Capitalism reminds you of the Sorcerer's Apprentice. Funky, he references the Sorcerer's Apprentice in the Communist Manifesto. He references it. I'll pull up the quote. He references that. Let me pull up the quote where he references that. He references that particular story that comes, that's in Fantasia by Disney. He references it. Right? You don't know how right you are, Funky. I will pull up the quote. Right? Sorcerer. Here we go. This is in chapter 1. Modern bourgeois society, with its relations of production, of exchange, and property, a society that has conjured up such gigantic means of production and exchange, is like a sorcerer who is no longer able to control the powers of the nether world, whom he has called up by his spells. That is a quote from the Communist Manifesto, Funky, so you don't know how right you are. That is a direct quote from the manifesto. Right here, it is in chapter 1. Modern bourgeois society, with its relations of production and exchange, a society that has conjured up such a gigantic means of production is like a sorcerer who is no longer able to control the powers of the netherworld, whom he has called up by his spells. That is a quote from chapter 1. So, Funky, you don't know how right you are when you said it's kind of like the Sorcerer's Apprentice. Marx says so. He actually uses that analogy. So you are right on point, Funky. You are right on point. You are right on point. But I want to talk to you all tonight about another quote that I think is important. And I'm just making my general point that if you've read it, go read it again. Right? This is another quote. This is a quote that I use in the section on Bonapartism. I use this quote from Karl Marx. I think I quote it several times because it's really important. And it's something that Marx throws out. It's in the Communist Manifesto, the original Marxist document, not some obscure Marxist text. It's right there in front of your face. Karl Marx. This is what he writes. At the end of chapter 3, I know I quote it. He says, this is what he wrote. The bourgeoisie, that's the owners of the means of production, the capitalists, find themselves involved in a constant battle. At first with the aristocracy, and later on with portions of the bourgeoisie itself, whose interests have become antagonistic to the progress of industry. At all times with the bourgeoisie of foreign countries, meaning the capitalists fight among themselves. First with the old feudal system, then with sections of the capitalists who are against them making profits, and at all times against other capitalists in other countries. In all these battles, it sees itself compelled to appeal to the proletariat, to ask for help, and thus to drag it into the political arena. The bourgeoisie, therefore, supplies the proletariat with its own elements of political and general education. In other words, it furnishes the proletariat with weapons for fighting the bourgeoisie. I, for years, have been telling people that every revolution in history begins with a fight inside of the ruling class. The capitalists are fighting with each other, and they bring the workers into the political struggle, and that is how the movement gets started. And every revolution in history started out as a fight among the capitalists. Working class people were brought in. There it is. The bourgeoisie supplies the proletariat with its own elements of political and general education, and it furnishes the proletariat with weapons to fight the bourgeoisie. And finally, it says, in times when the class struggle nears the decisive hour, and the process of dissolution going on within the ruling class, in fact, within the whole range of society, assumes a violent, glaring character. A small section of the ruling class cuts itself adrift and joins the revolutionary class, the class that holds the future in its hands. Just as, in an earlier period, a section of the nobility went over to the bourgeoisie, so now a section of the bourgeoisie goes over to the proletariat. And in particular, a portion of bourgeois ideologists who have raised themselves to the level of comprehending, theoretically, the whole historical movement. Meaning that what happens is the capitalists start bringing the workers into the process. But gradually the workers awaken and they get more and more involved, and then pretty soon, it switches. And a section of the capitalists starts aligning with the workers because the workers are the stronger force. It's right there in the Communist Manifesto that it starts out with divisions in the ruling class. It starts out with divisions in the ruling class that assume a more violent character as society becomes more and more catastrophic, and at a decisive moment, you have some capitalists that come over to the workers amid the struggle. Everything I've talked about on here about Bonapartism and divisions in the ruling class is right there in the Communist Manifesto. Furthermore, in the section of the Communist Manifesto that I just read to you, in the section where it talks about what socialism is, what does it say? It says, of course, in the beginning, this cannot be effected except by means of despotic inroads on the rights of property, on the conditions of production. But by these measures, therefore, which appear economically insufficient and untenable, but which, in the course of the movement, outstrip themselves, necessitate further inroads in the old social order, are unavoidable means of entirely revolutionizing the means of production. What does that mean? It means you don't start out. The revolution doesn't start with a call to nationalize all the means of production. It starts out with simple things like public control of natural resources, public control of banking. It starts out with things like our 4-point plan, despotic inroads on the rights of private property. We say, no, the capitalists don't have a right to own their banks. No, the capitalists don't have the right to own our oil and our natural gas and our coal and our timber. And as oil and natural gas becomes public property, and as coal and timber becomes public property, it becomes unavoidable to entirely revolutionize the mode of production, meaning it starts out with a program that challenges capitalist property, but is not full socialism. But it is through the process of fighting for those demands, those transitional demands, that transitional program, it is through that program that we embark upon the road of revolutionizing the entire mode of production. So you should be putting forward a 4-point economic plan. You should be putting forward something that sounds very sensible to people, but includes despotic inroads on the right of private property, like public control of banking, like a national jobs program, like an economic bill of rights. These things seem pretty sensible to everybody, except they are despotic inroads on the right of private property of the capitalists. And if they were to be enacted, society would out of necessity have to move toward a fully socialist mode of production. And what is the very next sentence? The very next sentence, right after that, what does it say? It says, these measures will, of course, meaning this is common sense, meaning I shouldn't even have to say this. These measures will, of course, be different in different countries. So that sounds to me an awful lot like in America, the socialism that we have is going to have American characteristics, just like socialism in Vietnam has Vietnamese characteristics, just like socialism in Cuba has Cuban characteristics. These measures will, of course, I shouldn't even have to say this, be different in different countries. Meaning that if you say you want socialism with American characteristics, these measures will, of course, be different in different countries. Tell that to Luna Oy and Danny Haiphong and all the people who can't comprehend that like socialism in America might have like aspects of it that are like uniquely applied to America. I mean, that must be racist or something. I mean, it's it's pretty basic stuff that we're talking about here. Pretty basic stuff. And if you read the Communist Manifesto again, you'll realize that all the things that we say on here are pretty much in line with what they were saying. The problem of capitalism being that it holds back economic growth. Nobody talks that way anymore. But that is pretty basic. That's pretty basic stuff. Pretty basic stuff. The understanding that socialism means a centrally planned economy where the means of production function for the good of the whole country overall. No, it doesn't mean independent worker cooperatives. No, it doesn't mean more of a welfare state. No, it doesn't mean just nationalization or government ownership. It means centralization, elimination of the anarchy of production. And that socialism, the way you take power is by putting forward a program that isn't full socialism, but includes despotic inroads on the right of private property, like nationalization of banking, like nationalization of oil, like our 4-point plan. And that, yes, the socialism that comes to America will be different. It'll have American characteristics. None of this is complicated. And the idea that the way the revolutionary movement happens is the capitalists are fighting with each other and they supply the workers with political education. They supply them with the weapons. And as the working class gets more active because the capitalists are fighting among themselves, pretty soon the working class realizes its own strength and becomes independent. And then some of the capitalists come over to their side because they realize their future is with the working class. All of this is basic. All of this is basic. And the Center for Political Innovation, what we are doing is we are just following the Communist Manifesto. That's what we're doing. I mean, what we're doing is just basic stuff. It is just basic. But you wouldn't know that if you don't read it. And then read it again. And then read it again. And then go and read it again. You wouldn't know that. Right? And these people don't read it again. These people don't read it. They watch Vosh videos. They read Herbert Marcuse. They read Theodore Adorno. They don't read this stuff. They don't read William Z. Foster. They don't read Gus Hall. They don't read Lenin. They don't read Stalin. They don't read Mao. And then there are some people who do. But they don't really have the will or the strength of character to actually do anything about it. There are so many people on the internet who call themselves Marxists, and they're not. You know what they are? They are this. I'll show you what they are. This is what they are. Old man yells at cloud. That's what they are. I would say the majority of the people on the internet who call themselves communists are old man yells at cloud. That is what they are. The other night I was talking about Tulsi Gabbard. How important Tulsi Gabbard is as an active duty U.S. soldier who is speaking up against regime change and who clearly has a lot of support. She has been a host for Tucker Carlson, a host on Fox News. She was a candidate for president who appeared in the debates. She clearly matters. And if we're trying to actually get the working class in motion, build up a working class movement, somebody like Tulsi Gabbard matters. But when I was talking about Tulsi Gabbard last night, there were a number of the people in the chat who were going, she's not a communist. No one said she was a communist. She's in the imperialist army. Do you think I don't know that? She's bad. And when I was on there saying that the Democrats were bad and that the Republicans, as hard as it is to acknowledge it, they are the more progressive wing because they're at odds with the FBI. They're opposing the wars. So many people in the chat, and again, I'm not saying to vote for Republicans. I'm just saying that's who we need to be talking to, right? They are the wing of the power structure that is at odds with the state, that is at odds with the war agenda. That's, the people, the people that are getting mobilized by Trump and MAGA, and that's who we need to be talking to, right? Which is my position. We need to talk to them, right? That's who we should be talking to, not the wokes. There were many people in the chat going, they're bad too. All of them are bad. They're all just bad. Everyone's bad. And that's, I swear, There are so many people that they don't see Marxism as a vehicle for actually trying to change the world. They just see Marxism as a verbiage, a language which they can use to condemn the world. And they can be an old man yelling at cloud. And they can feel like they're smarter than everyone else, and they can yell at everyone else, and they can just get on there and Tulsi Gabbard's no good, and Trump is no good, and Biden's no good, and China's no good, and Russia's no good, and everyone's no good, and I'm smarter than everybody else. And they just get on the internet, and it doesn't matter. If a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it, no one's there to hear it, does it really make a noise? I don't know. I don't know. And that is how these people think. It never occurs to them that one might not need to build a real organization. Never occurs to them that things that you might have to work with people you don't agree with. Never occurs to them that you have to be patient with people. Never occurs to them that people might make mistakes. Never occurs to them. Never occurs to them that there's more to this than just all this stuff is for them is just a vehicle to condemn the world. It's a way to say the world is wrong and I'm right. That is all it is for a lot of these people. They are old man yells at cloud. That's all they are. Old man yells at cloud. And I am at the point where I realize that this YouTube channel is never going to get huge because social media is rigged. Social media is absolutely rigged. Folks, I confronted Sa Ing-wen. Maybe you didn't see it. Let me see if I got the video here. I can put it on here. Right? I confronted the president of Taiwan. That was a pretty big deal. Yeah, this happened. You remember this?
Not represent what the American people want. All the polls show that the American people don't want a new war. The American people are sick and tired of our money being wasted on bombs and weapons and destruction, provoking a war with China, provoking a war with Russia, while our trains are derailing, people in the United States are suffering, our water's not being purified, our railroads are falling apart, our power grids are falling apart, and yet we pour more and more weapons and money into some stupid confrontation with China. China is not our enemy. Wall Street bankers are our enemy. No more provocations against China. China is not our enemy. 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 Get out of our country. Stop trying to sell war in our country. Stop trying to sell war in our country. We don't want a new war with China. We love America and we don't want a new war with China. China is not our enemy. Stop trying to sell war. Get out of our country. Stop trying to sell war. China is not our enemy. I'm a patriotic American. I love my country and I don't want World War III.
Yeah, that happened. And shout out to Jamie, InfraWiki, and shout out to Jim for communism, and shout out to Sam Bismuth-Hertz, and shout out to Sage. All of you were there. We did great. It was an epic moment. Now, that moment, you would think that would be a big deal. I mean, this is the president of a country the USA doesn't recognize in New York City, on the streets of New York, a group of Americans with signs about how they want jobs and health care confronted this person. Now, you would think this would be a big deal, right? I mean, it's a pretty big deal. And it's a big deal in China. In China, it's a really big deal. It got millions of shares. It was all over Chinese state TV. I was interviewed by Global Times. Global Times interviewed me about this book. It's big on Chinese social media. It was big on TikTok. All over TikTok, you can find that video. It's all over TikTok that happened. But on Twitter, it got less than 300 or just over 350 retweets. like it didn't happen. And on Facebook, doesn't matter. On YouTube, doesn't matter. Because it's rigged. It's rigged. It's rigged. And on top of that, you would think there's certain people that are all over Twitter, all over Facebook. You know, they're the big anti-imperialists. Oh, you know, they support China, they support Russia. And those people all basically decided not to promote it. They all basically decided, you know, we're boycotting Caleb. We're trying to lock CPI out because CPI isn't part of our little club, right? And so all of the people that would normally have promoted anything related to China and someone calling out US aid to Taiwan, you know, Ben Norton and all of them, they huddled up and they decided to pretend it didn't happen. So not only is YouTube rigged, and not only is Twitter rigged, I mean, read the Twitter files. Facebook, not only is it rigged, read about Mark Zuckerberg and the FBI, but on top of that, the fake anti-imperialists who have been selected are also rigged. They decided that they weren't going to do anything like this, you know, and they have decided not to promote anything that we do. So, you know, social media is rigged. We are never going to win the social media game. And I am done trying to win the social media game. I like talking to all of you. That's why I'm here 8 nights in a row. I might be back tomorrow night. We'll see. We're not going to win the social media game. Social media is rigged. The whole point of this YouTube channel is to get you involved in an IRL, in real life community. And some of you will and some of you won't. And those of you who won't, I appreciate you watching. And those of you who will, that's why I'm here. The whole point of this YouTube channel is to build an in real life organization that is called the Center for Political Innovation. I want you to join in real life and be part of our real organization. And if that's not sexy, right? And the content that I create is not going to be as sexy, and it's going to be more heavily suppressed because that's what they're afraid of. They're afraid of a real anti-imperialist movement emerging in America. That is what they were afraid of. And if this channel, if this YouTube channel and all the stuff I did was all designed to win on social media, it would be very different. But it's not. We're not trying to win on social media. We are trying to build an in real life organization to save America from the death agony of capitalism and decay. That is what we are trying to do. And so the way we present ourselves, the rhetoric that we use, the way things go is going to be different. This is about building an in real life organization. This is about building a real community to get real shit done. This is not about trying to win on social media. And because of that, there is going to be a lot of people who just can't appreciate it. The people who just want to be old man yelling at cloud are going to be like, why is he promoting Tulsi Gabbard? Because of everything I just read to you about divisions in the ruling class, etc. There's a reason, but if you're not trying to actually win this, you won't understand the reason. And on top of that, you know, why am I talking about socialism with American characteristics? Well, if I was just trying to be woke on social media like Danny Haifong and Luna Oi, and I just want to show everyone how much I hate America because I just, then I would talk differently. But I'm actually trying to build a real organization and actually get real shit done and win over real Americans to fight for real socialism. And so that's going to require me to talk in ways that aren't so sexy and people who just want to get on there and feel good about themselves. It's going to be different. It's going to be different the way we talk on here. Right? And we won't win the social media war because we serve a different purpose. You know, we serve a different purpose. We are trying to build a real organization. We are trying to free the Uhuru movement and get the charges against the Uhuru movement dropped. We are trying to free and raise awareness around Julian Assange. We are trying to build a real peace movement to stop World War III. We are trying to build a real network so when the storm comes, we have something of an infrastructure. And I'll get to that later. I'll probably talk about that on a future stream. But we're going to hit something that I'm starting to call strategic equilibrium. I'm really only calling that because it's a game changer, right? And that term has a meaning in Mao's theory of guerrilla warfare, a completely different meaning. But we're going to hit an event horizon. We are going to hit an event horizon at some point where all that will matter is how much of a in real life organization you have built, and there will be a desperate need on the part of the proletariat, of the working class, for organizations. Right now, people only join organizations because they wanna, right? Because they're interested, because they want to get some more meaning in their life by being part of a group. But there will come a time where the conditions are so bad that people join out of necessity. If you look at revolutionary movements around the world, people join them out of necessity. People join the Bolivarian movements of Latin America out of necessity. People join the revolutionary organizations of the Middle East out of necessity. People joined with Mao out of necessity. And when we hit that line, all the rules of the game will change because people will be joining groups very, very rapidly. But they'll be joining them for very, very different reasons. We need to have an organization set up so that when that event horizon comes, when people are ready to pour into our organization, we're ready to organize them. Right? We will hit that event horizon, but if we don't have an organization first, we don't have an organization set up to meet the needs of that moment, then the ruling class will have different fascist organizations and we'll be fucked. Right? We need to lay the foundations for when we hit strategic equilibrium. And that is something that we're talking about here. We just have to get our organization set up. We have to do in real life stuff. We have to have in real life organizations and meetings. We have to have weekend workshops. We have to have conferences. We have to have a network of people that we're ready to work with, so that when we hit the event horizon, the strategic equilibrium, we can swing into action, right? We're not there yet. But that's what we need to do. And so I wanted to share that with all of you. I wanted to share this with all of you. And I wanted you all to think about it because, again, read the Communist Manifesto. If you haven't read it, read it again. And then read it again. And then if you already read it, read it again. Because what we're doing here is guided by truths. And as I've said in many other streams, Marxism doesn't make sense to you if you're not involved in building a real organization. It seems gibberish. But now I'm going to get into another field. I'm going to take this into another direction. Because one of the beautiful things about CPI is that we are not hostile to religion. Right? We are open to many different perspectives. There are atheists in CPI. There are Jews and Muslims in CPI. There are many Christians in CPI, many Catholics. We have Orthodox Christians. We have Protestants like myself. We're not hostile to religion. And it is my belief, following what Karl Kautsky brilliantly laid out in his book, The Foundations of Christianity, that Christianity was the proletarian movement of ancient Rome. That in ancient Roman society, there was one class, a new class, made up primarily of Greeks and Jews, who were not slaves, but also owned no property, and they sold their labor power. And that in ancient Rome, this class, the working class, the proletariat, the proletari, as they called them in Latin, the class that owned nothing but their children, the men of no property, the bricklayers, the pipe fitters, the blacksmiths, the basket weavers, the craftsman class of ancient Rome, the wage working class of ancient Rome, that as they began to go on strike against their employers, and as they began to build orphanages for the homeless children, they found the religion Jesus of Nazareth and the values of that religion and the teachings of that religion as a way to give expression to the proletarian movement. Christianity is nothing but ancient Roman communism. And communism is nothing but 20th century Christianity. It is the same movement. It is the movement of the proletariat, of the working class, of the wealth-producing people against greed against man's inhumanity to man, fighting for a new world where the last shall be first and the first shall be last. Communism is nothing but 21st century Christianity. And Christianity was really, when it gets down to it, nothing but ancient Roman communism. And that these two movements, communism and Christianity, they use different words. They express themselves in different ways. But ultimately, they have the exact same narrative of human history. Christianity says we started out in the Garden of Eden and all things were in balance, but then we rebelled, we ate from the tree of knowledge, we got knowledge, we had to work for a living, and the patriarchal family structure started, and we got away from God, but then we had the ability to get closer, and eventually Christ will return, and we will return to Eden, and we will get back to that ideal condition of all things in balance. That's what Christianity says. Communism says the exact same thing. It says the majority of human history we were hunter-gatherers, but we got too good at hunting and gathering, and so we had to start working and growing our own food, and that led to the creation of the traditional patriarchal family structure and private property and all of that, and then that laid the basis for a movement to come into existence, and that movement will lead to eventually getting back to that state of existence where there is total equality, where people can just take what they need from each according to their own ability to each according to their need. It's the exact same narrative of human history. It's the exact same understanding. It's this understanding that at some point human beings acquired tool-making abilities. At some point, human beings developed a unique kind of intelligence. And that unique kind of intelligence put us on a weird trajectory where we could invent things and we could move toward higher modes of production, but it threw the world out of whack. It threw the world out of balance. And eventually, the proletariat, the working class that came first into existence in ancient Rome, the proletariat, the working class, is the class that can ultimately lead us back to Eden, can lead us back to a high-tech version of what we used to have, which is a society where there was no inequality, where no one exploited anyone else, where people, we lived by consuming, and that there was very little needed to do to produce, right? That's the idea, right? Dialectical and historical materialism and the Bible give roughly the same account of human history, right? And we know that communism says it is the movement of the proletariat that will lead to the creation of heaven on earth, of communism. Christianity began as the movement of the proletariat, and they believed it was through Christianity that eventually Jesus Christ would return and tear down a mighty empire and lead humanity toward a world without death, without darkness, etc. So, really, the two movements are synonymous. And so when I said read it again, but with this understanding that you will not get elsewhere, except from Karl Kautsky, except from liberation theology writings, except from communists in Latin America who are also Christians, except from Hugo Chavez, except from maybe some of the Russian Orthodox, communist Christians in Russia, Gennady Zhuganov and others. With that understanding, if you've read this book, read it again. And then if you've already read it, read it again. And then if you've already read it, read it again. Right? The Communist Manifesto and the Bible walk hand in hand. And with a new understanding, again, just like when you read the Communist Manifesto, there are things that stand out to you that you missed when you went over it the first time. When you read the Bible again with the understanding that we have on these live streams of Christianity as the movement of the proletariat, of the narrative of Christianity being basically an expression of what Marx was talking about with historical materialism, the struggle to return to Eden. Things are going to stand out to you that didn't stand out before. And I'm telling you that lately I have gotten a lot of insights from reading the epistles, right? The New Testament of the Bible, you have the Gospels, the accounts of the life of Jesus, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Then you have the Acts of the Apostles, and then you have what are called the epistles, which are various letters written by the Apostle Paul. And if you read them, you can tell the Apostle Paul is trying to organize a movement, and it's not easy. And he's trying to get groups of people in different cities that have a hard time communicating because there's no internet, there's no telephones, the means of communication back then are very limited. There's no printing press even. There's handwritten letters, and only certain people called scribes have the ability to read and write. Most people can't. The Apostle Paul is going around through Rome, through Corinth, through different places, and he is trying to organize a movement. And there are disagreements within this movement. There are different factions that believe one thing. There are all kinds of disagreements. And the Apostle Paul is writing these manifestos. That's what a letter is. A letter is a manifesto expressing the beliefs of Christianity and also laying out and addressing the disputes that were happening. And that is what the epistles are. And if you read it as an organizer, if you think of it as like this is a proletarian movement, a movement of the working class that's trying to organize itself, and it's got people in different cities who've got their own ideas and they're fighting with each other, and there are different divisions. If you read the epistles of the New Testament with the understanding of this is an organizer, this is a revolutionary organizer trying to organize a revolutionary movement, trying to hold a group of people together, trying to get people to be compassionate, trying to get people to be nice to each other, trying to get people to think of the whole group and not just of their own short-term egos. If you read the epistles in that context, it makes a lot of sense. So again, I urge you to go back and read the Bible with this understanding. This is a great revolutionary movement in ancient times. And on that note, I'm actually going to read you very briefly from one of the epistles, because I think this is important. This is chapter 12 of Corinthians. This is the Apostle Paul talking to the people in Corinth. He writes, "Now there are diversities of gifts, but the same Spirit. And there are differences of administrations, but the same Lord. And there are diversities of operations, but it is the same God which worketh all in all. But the manifestation of the Spirit is given to every man to profit withal. For to one is given by the Spirit of the word of wisdom, to another the word of knowledge by the same Spirit, to another faith by the same Spirit, to another gifts of healing by the same Spirit, to another the working of miracles, to another prophecy, to another discerning of spirits, to another diverse kinds of tongues, and to another the interpretation of tongues. But all these worketh that one and the self same Spirit, dividing to every man severally as he will. For as the body is one, and one hath many members, and all the members of that one body, being many, are one body, so also is Christ. For by one Spirit are we all baptized into one body, whether we be Jews or Gentiles, whether we be bond or free, and have been all made to drink into one Spirit. For the body is not one member, but many. And if the foot shall say, because I am not a hand, I am not a body, I am not of the body, is it therefore not the body? And if the ear shall say, because I am not the eye, I am not the body, is it therefore not of the body? If the whole body were an eye, where were the hearing? If the whole were hearing, where were the smelling? But now hath God set the members, every one of them, in the body, as it hath pleased him. And if they were all one member, where were the body? But now are they many members, but yet one body. And the eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of thee. Nor again can the head say to the feet, I have no need of you. Nay, much more those members of the body, which seem to be more feeble, are necessary. And those members of the body, which we think to be less honorable, upon these we bestow more abundant honor. And our uncomely parts have more abundant comeliness. For our comely parts have no need, but God hath tempered the body together, having given more abundant honor to that part which lacked, that there should be no schism in the body, but that the members should have the same care for another. And whether one member shall suffer, all members suffer with it. Or one member be honored, all the members rejoice with it. Now ye are the body of Christ, and members in particular. And God hath set some in the church, first apostles, secondarily prophets, thirdly teachers, after that miracles, then gifts of healing, helps, governments, diversities of tongues. Are all apostles? Are all prophets? Are all teachers? Are all workers of miracles? Having all the gifts of healing, do all speak with tongues? Do all interpret? But you covet earnestly the best gifts, and yet you shew I unto you a more excellent way. Meaning, what is he saying here? He's saying to his people, to his movement, stop seeing it as being about yourself. Stop seeing it as being about your own glorification. And on top of that, stop seeing other people as if they should be perfect. Because we all can do some good things, some things very well, and some things not so well. We all have our strengths and our weaknesses. We all have things we can do very, very well and things we cannot do. And we should see the victory of one of us as the victory of all of us, as the victory of the whole organization. And we should see the setback of one of us as a setback for the whole organization. We should think of ourselves as different body parts, as feet, as ears, as eyes, all in one body. That is how we should see ourselves. And we should recognize that the eye is great for seeing, but it can't hear. The ear is great for hearing, but it can't smell. That's what he's saying. And he's saying to people, if you want to be part of our movement, of our Christianity, our movement, right? You got to stop seeing it, number one, as being about your individual fulfillment. You got to see yourself as one body part, as one member of a whole body. But two, you also have to recognize that some people will be flawed. Some people will let you down. Some people won't be able to do everything. Some people will be really good at one thing and they won't be good at something else. And you have to work with that. This is really good insights. You read the epistles. This is, you talk about movements that have been very successful. Christianity ended up being the biggest religion in the world. Well, the Apostle Paul is trying to organize a movement when it's very small. And he's telling people, if we're going to do this right, you have to not see yourself as being in it for yourself. You have to be part of the whole movement. You have to recognize other people's limitations. You have to recognize your own limitations. And when the whole group is rising, you must rise with it. And when the whole group is suffering, you must suffer with it. That you have to give up your individuality. This is the whole message of Christianity, right? Love your neighbor as yourself, right? Stop being only an individual, but become part of the collective of humanity. We're pumped with this insane individualism nowadays. It's just pumped into us everywhere we go. There's this constant individualism. And it's destroying civilization. No one has any obligation to be in a group. No one has any obligation to think of other people. If someone gets mad about something, oh, they're out of there. The internet makes everyone feel like their own hardship, their own trauma, their own disappointment is the most important thing in the world. Makes everyone scared to associate with anyone else. You know, I read a book that said that this was the evil of capitalism. I read a book called The Communist Manifesto. What did it say? What did it say about the bourgeoisie? What did chapter 1 of the Communist Manifesto say? It said that the problem with capitalism was what? That wherever the bourgeoisie, wherever it has got the upper hand, it's put an end to all feudal, patriarchal, and idyllic relations. It has pitilessly torn asunder the motley ties that bound man to his natural superiors and left no remaining nexus between man and man than naked self-interest, than callous cash payment. It's isolating people, dividing them against each other, weakening communities, weakening everyone, isolating everyone into an atomized individual. And when you're all alone and isolated, the bourgeoisie can roll right over you. But what does the Communist Manifesto also say? What does it also say? In chapter 1, it says the increasing improvement of machinery and even more rapidly developing makes livelihood more and more precarious. Technology leads to people getting poorer. And the collisions between individual workmen and individual bourgeois take more and more the character of collision between two classes. Thereupon, the workers begin to form combinations. Combinations. That's the word that's used. Most translations, like the one I'm reading now, have in parenthesis trade unions. That is not correct. A trade union is one form of a combination. There are many, many forms of combination. Thereupon, the workers begin to form combinations against the bourgeoisie. They club together in order to keep up the rate of wages. They found permanent associations in order to make provisions beforehand for these occasional revolts. That things get so bad, their greed gets so intense, and the machinery and the technology advances so much that there comes a time where working people have no choice but to form combinations and lock arm in arm with each other and club together. Club together. And now and then the workers are victorious, but only for a time. The real fruit of their battle lies not in the immediate result, but in the ever-expanding union of the workers. And this union is helped by improved means of communication created by modern industry that place workers of different localities in touch with one another. It was just this contact that was needed to centralize local struggles, all of the same character, into one national struggle between classes. This organizations of the proletarians into a class and consequently into a political party is continually being upset by the competition between workers themselves, but it ever rises up again, stronger, firmer, and mightier. And it compels legislative recognition of particular interests of the workers by taking advantage of the divisions among the bourgeoisie itself. Altogether, collisions between classes of the old society, in many ways, the course of the development of the proletariat. The bourgeoisie finds itself in constant battle. I read you all of this. As the class struggle nears the decisive hour, it's all there. Everything we talk about on here, it's all there. And it's all in here, too. It's all in here, and it's all in the Communist Manifesto. And it's all in the little red book. It's all in here, and it's all in here, and it's all in the manifesto, and it's all in Socialism, Utopian, and Scientific. So my opening remarks tonight, the message is, if you read it, good, go and read it again. And then you read it again, now great, now go and read it again. And you learn from the process of struggle. You learn from the process of struggle. You learn by doing, you learn by living it. And if you're not living it, and you're not building a community, and you're not trying to hold a group of people together, then it's not going to make any sense to you. You learn by living, you learn by leading, and you lead by learning, and you learn by living. From the masses to the masses. Real knowledge comes from correct, practical experience. The words are dead unless they are connected with the living struggle, with the effort to build a real organization. There's a reason that they've done everything they can to try and prevent you from listening to this stream. Let me just end by pointing out that if you're one of the people watching this right now, you're awesome. And I'm not just exaggerating. I'm not just being facetious here. They have done everything in their power to prevent you from listening to me. They have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to make videos to convince you that I'm a Nazi, that I'm a pedophile, rapist, Nazi, white supremacist. They have put all kinds of peer pressure on you to not listen to me. They have tried everything. They have told you, they've tried to cancel you for listening to me. They've spread lies about me. They've exaggerated things and taken them out of context and done everything they can. Everything they can. Every psychological trick, every means of deception, every maneuver. They've done everything they can to try and prevent you from watching this and listening to this. But you are still here. And that means that you are a strong person. That means that you have the love of God and the energy and the strength of the Spirit within you. You listening to me right now is like climbing a mountain. Listening to me right now is like jumping over a barricade. To get where you are right now, that you are listening to me when they have spent literally hundreds of thousands of dollars to try and prevent you from ever listening to me. They have made an endless effort to do everything they could to stigmatize anyone who associates with me, to spread lies and inoculate people against me. The fact that you are here says way more about you than it says about me. And it says to me that you are a strong person. that you, I don't know about your physical capabilities. You may not be particularly athletic, but when it comes to your psychological strength, your firmness, your ability to not be moved, it says that you are a strong person. That's what it says. There is something amazingly strong about you. And that is beautiful. But my job, again, because I'm not trying to be popular, because I'm not on here trying to win a popularity contest, because I'm trying to build an in real life organization, to engage in real life struggle, to get us to in real life socialism, to defeat in real life imperialism. My job is to challenge you. To challenge you to go further. My job is to challenge you to join the Center for Political Innovation. If you haven't done it already, become a full member. My job is to challenge you to get involved in our activities. My job is to challenge you to spread the truth to other people who need to hear it. My job is to challenge you to go further. My job is to inspire you. My job is to give you the love and the support that you need in order to be even stronger than you already are. And there's times you guys have had to stand for me. You've had to help me when I was in a jam. So many of you came and helped me when I was in a jam. So many of you were there for me when I was down, and I will never forget that. And that shows me how important this really is. This is a community. This is a movement. This is so much more than a YouTube channel, so much more than an online shit show. We're doing something really, really special here, folks. So if you haven't read it, go and read it. If you have read it, go and read it again. Dare to struggle and dare to win. All right, folks, names and locations, names and locations. I will call you out as I see you. Names and locations, names and locations. Who is with us here tonight? I'll start calling you out as I see you, and then I'll start answering super chats, names and locations. Who is with us here tonight? We got John Whitty in Houston, Jonathan Mahari in Sweden. We got Alex Olivier from Peru, or from Brazil, sorry. We got Michael in Houston. We got Mariah in North Carolina, says, let us therefore make every effort to do what leads to peace and mutual edification. Romans 14:19. We got Carolyn and Dario from Brooklyn. We got James Lizer from Ontario, Canada. We got Chester in England. We got David Rennie in Ontario, Balthazar in Oakland, Rupert in England, Jamie in St. Paul, Randall Wilson in Lexington, Kentucky, Binghamton, New York, Love Blind Hate, Patch in Arizona, Briggy in Pennsylvania, Catalonia, Spain. Very good. Always glad to have you here. London, Clinton Frazier. We got Chris in Salt Lake City. We got Dustin Schlesinger in Cleveland, Ohio. We got Miss Lynn Valley of Smoke, Bob Troy in New York, Ellie in Chicago. Shout out to you, Ellie. Detroit, Anthony. Rice from Adelaide, Australia. Names and locations, folks. Names and locations. I will call you out as I see you. David Fox is driving back to Bendigo, Australia. Rice is in Adelaide, Australia. We got Emmett in Dallas. Welcome, Emmett. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Molly McGuire is out in Orange County, the OC. South Derry, Northern Ireland. Michael McGoldrick. AJ from AJ. Ian McCarthy in Chicago. Ron McKinnon is in New York City. Chicago, Gabby Hernandez, great stream. Needed it. Autoimmune diseases suck. Bless you all. Sorry you're suffering there, comrade. Sorry your health is where. Palser in New Jersey. So great to be here with all of you. So great to be here with all of you. So great to be here. Oh, we got Gray in Moonlight, California. Very, very good. So, Northern Michigan, A Better America is with us. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Be sure to you hit the notifications bell. Be sure to do that. Your thoughts on Iran shifting from west to east and cooperating with Russia and China. So there you go. Excuse me. Spring allergies. There we go. There we go. All right. So now I will start answering your super chat questions. Quick reminder, I've been doing this one. Seems to be helpful to remind people that most of the people who watch these streams watch them the next day, the next few days, etc. But those of you that are watching this live have a special ability, a special opportunity. You have the ability to push this conversation however you want, to nudge the conversation the way you want it to go. So I would encourage you to do that. If there is something that you want to talk about, something that's on your mind tonight as you watch this program, send a super chat in and I will do my best to give you an answer, right? It's a special opportunity you have to craft this program to go the way you want it to go. So please, by all means, send a super chat so that you can craft the conversation. First super chat question. I don't know what this means. I do not know what this first super chat question means. And here's one I missed. Tina Turner writing it down, right? The first super chat I got, refreshing, attending, best dialectical worldview. I do not know what that means. Perhaps Panos is simply, saying how much he appreciates the program, that it is refreshing that I have the best dialectical worldview. I appreciate that. Perhaps it's a compliment. I don't quite know what you're getting at, Panos. If you want to do a follow-up, I'll see it in the chat. The impact of the long telegram. Was Keenan as important into the mid-20th century Cold War as Brzezinski was? So there we go. All righty. Wrote it down. All right. So I don't know what you're getting at there, Panos. Now, the next one is, have you ever watched the 1957 How to Recognize a Communist video and your thoughts? I think we've showed it on here before. I think I even have it still, right? I think I have it in the videos here. Right. I have like how to spot a communist, right? Right. We'll put it on here. How to spot a communist. Here we go. I've shown it on these streams before. Let's watch it again. It's less than a minute.
In democratic societies.
In recognizing a communist, physical appearance counts for nothing. If he opens...
That's right. Physical appearance counts for nothing. Who knows what communists look like? They could look like anything.
...declares himself to be a communist, we take his word for it.
That's kind of funny because I think there's a lot of people now who call themselves communists who ain't. That's kind of funny, but, I guess, back in the McCarthy period, if you were going around calling yourself a communist, you probably was one or you were crazy because communists were getting persecuted.
If a person consistently reads and advocates the views expressed in a communist publication, he may be a communist.
Well, duh.
If a person supports organizations which reflect communist teachings, or organizations labeled communist by the Department of Justice, she may be a communist.
Yes, that is true.
If a person defends the activities of communist nations while consistently attacking the domestic and foreign policy of the United States, she may be a communist.
Look, communists are angry women who stand on soapboxes. Look, that woman's got an anger problem. Look at this woman. I mean, I don't know who she is, but it's like that's what they think a communist is a woman on a soapbox who's having a temper tantrum. I am so mad. I'm a woman and I'm mad. We can't have that. You know, I like, what is that? Like, I mean, that's what they think a communist is. It's like a woman on a soapbox. That's defending the actions of communist countries while consistently criticizing the foreign policy of the United States. Like, yeah, that's what they think a communist is. It's a woman in a hat who looks just really, she's mad. She is pissed off. And she's hitting that guy on the shoulder. She just can't take it. Look how mad she is. If you're a mad, angry woman who is standing on a soapbox and hitting a guy on the shoulder, you're a communist. Oh, if you do that, there you go.
If a person does all these things over a period of
right. So a communist is a guy at a bar who talks too much, a woman who has a literature table that says down with the imperialists, a sly looking guy reading the Daily Worker, and a woman with an anger problem, right? That's what a communist is. Guy in bar who talks too much. That alcohol gets to him and he just starts telling all his secrets. Oh boy, let me tell you, I think we need a revolution of the proletariat. That's what we need. We need the means of production to be controlled by the workers. Oh, did I just say that? I'm drunk. Oh my God. That's the first guy. The next one is a woman who works at a literature table and it says down with the imperialists behind her. Little did you know that she didn't realize this was actually like she's into hip hop and she likes the imperialists. So she's like, I'm down with the imperialists, bro. Like she thinks the imperialists are awesome. She had no idea. She's like a very pro-imperialist woman. And she's down with the imperialists, meaning that she loves the imperialists. She likes to hang out with them. And so that doesn't work. And then this guy, he's like sly and he's reading a newspaper and it's the Daily Worker and he's reading it mysteriously. No one knows I'm a communist. That's why I'm reading the communist newspaper right here in public and I'm shifty-eyed while I read it. I mean, you'd think he'd be like reading it with a smile on his face, like he agrees with it, but no, he's reading it in his shifty-eyed way. And then of course we have angry woman who just can't, I mean, she's just mad. I don't know what she's mad about. She's mad, she's yelling, she's waving her arms, she's slapping a guy on the shoulder, and there's a lot of people gathered around to watch her have her little meltdown, right? I mean, they're just like, this is entertaining. I mean, how often do you get to see, a woman just scream and yell on the side of the street? This is entertaining, right? That's what a communist are. Those are your four options, and they're all white people. They're all white. Two of them are women and two of them are men. So there you go. I think they all have dark hair. Communists are white people with dark hair. There you go.
time, he must
Look how mad she is.
be a communist.
And then they also go walking around with signs, end KKK terror. That's a sure sign. If someone is against KKK terror, they're probably a communist.
But there are other communists.
Right? End KKK terror. I mean, what a subversive message. Oh my God, we can't have that. End KKK
who
terror.
don't show their real faces, who work more silently.
No war bases.
By the
There you go. And that guy's wearing a ghost costume. Why is that guy wearing a ghost costume? That one woman, her sign says no KKK terror. That guy looks like he's in the KKK. He's wearing a ghost costume. Like, what is that? Like, it looks like he dressed up as a ghost for Halloween, right? He could be in the KKK. Isn't that what they did? They put sheets over him or whatever. Oh boy. Oh boy. There we go. There we go. That was my reaction to the video. Ukraine's attack on Belgorod, Freedom of Russia Legion. So there we go. There we go. There we go. All righty. All righty. I'm just sitting here. All right. Tina Turner. I'll just be honest with you all. I apologize. That's not music I'm familiar with. I'll just be honest with you. I don't know Tina Turner's music. I saw that she died. I recognized the name. I knew she was a very famous musician. I just don't know her work. Maybe maybe I'm missing out on something. I just don't know her work. I mean, there's some of these people, right? I just don't know her. I don't know Tina Turner, and it's a disappointment. I'm sorry, Tina. I know you passed on, that you're a beloved cultural icon. I'm just not familiar with your work. My deepest condolences go out to all your fans and supporters. I know you're a very pivotal person, and there's probably something I'm missing about you in my limited knowledge of music and culture. Rolling on the River. Wasn't Rolling on the River, wasn't that, there was this band in the 1960s, the Creedence Clearwater Revival, right? And didn't they do like Proud Mary, Rolling on the River? Wasn't that them, or no? Was that her? See, this is my ignorance. I know about Creedence Clearwater Revival, and they had a song called Proud Mary, but the chorus was rolling, rolling on the river, right? So I'm confused, right? So yeah, it was CCR, right? It was CCR, right? I got to tell you, I knew nothing about Creedence Clearwater Revival, nothing about it. Except that I knew my dad liked them because my dad is a boomer, right? And they were a quite popular rock and roll band way back when. And that my dad had a couple of their albums. He liked them when he was like a college student. But then when I was in high school, I was reading the newspaper, the Revolutionary Communist Party. And the newspaper, the Revolutionary Communist Party, they had a special issue of their newspaper about the Patriot Act, and it was called Bad Moon Rising. And I did not know, but I read that that was a reference to a Creedence Clearwater Revival song, a CCR song. So I went and listened. I got my dad's old vinyl record, and I listened to Bad Moon Rising. And it's kind of a fun song. I mean, it's dark, pessimistic, right? But it's a good song, right? And so then I found out later that apparently that band, Creedence Clearwater Revival, CCR, they were apparently one of the favorite bands of the Weather Underground. The Weathermen, whenever they would put out a leaflet, there was always a quote from CCR on it, right? They liked Creedence Clearwater Revival. I don't know why, but I guess probably just because they were hippies and that was the kind of music that the people they were trying to appeal to. So like apparently every leaflet that the revolutionary youth movement, the Weathermen put out had a quote from Creedence Clearwater Revival on it, which is interesting. And then I watched a lecture about the Weather Underground when they became, left adventurous terrorist groups back in the 70s. That apparently this lecture I watched, it began with playing the song Bad Moon Rising by Creedence Clearwater Revival. And apparently, like one of the verses of that song of Bad Moon Rising, if you think about the Weather Underground and their like bombing campaigns, it's a little bit dark, right? One of the verses of Bad Moon Rising is, hope you have got your things together. Hope you are quite prepared to die. Looks like we're in for nasty weather. Weather. One eye is taken for an eye. That's a particularly dark, and what's weird about Bad Moon Rising, it's kind of a happy song, it's like a happy song, but it's like shit is about to fall apart. Really bad things are about to happen, right? The song points to a tendency they call anti-fragility. That when things are going badly, there are certain people who do very well. It's weird, right? There are certain people who their interest, their abilities or whatever, put them at odds with the rest of society. If society starts falling apart, they do well. If there's a big famine, they do well. There's big war and ugliness, they do well, right? And that there's a certain section of the population, small minority, right? Very few people, but there's certain people that do well in the context of society-wide hardship and don't do so well, right? If things are going well, it's not a good time for them. They talk about anti-fragility. I think that's the term, right? There are certain people that are just anti-fragile, right? They have anti-fragility, meaning that, if things are going well, right? Yeah, that's Wikipedia. It's called anti-fragility is a property of systems in which they benefit from shocks, right? And that song Bad Moon Rising from Creedence Clearwater Revival, it kind of captures the spirit of anti-fragility. right? That basically, they're happy. I mean, it's a happy song, but it's like everything's falling apart. There's a bad moon on the rise, right? Hope you've got your things together. Hope you're quite prepared to die. Looks like we're in for nasty weather. One eye is taken for an eye, right? I mean, it's like it's kind of happy that everything's about to go to shit. So there you go. All right. All right. Thoughts on Iran shifting from west to east and cooperating with Russia and China? Well, look, they had the Islamic Revolution of 1979, which was very much an anti-American revolution. I mean, it was because they saw American imperialism as hurting their people, right? They called America the Great Satan, right? They said death to America, right? They seized the American embassy. They ended diplomatic relations with the United States. That all happened. But then you'll notice, especially in the 90s, Iran was kind of drifting closer to the United States. Iran was never fully in the Soviet camp. They made a big point of that. They said neither east nor west. And there was not a good relationship between the Soviet Union and Iran. I mean, it went back and forth. And the Soviet Union always kind of hoped that Iran would be their ally against the U.S. imperialists. But, I did an interview when I was in Iran. I hope that I don't know whatever happened to the video, but they had me do an interview with one of the hostage takers, one of the women who had taken hostages at the American embassy. And they had me sit down with her, and I interviewed her, and they recorded it. I wish that interview would be released. I don't know whatever happened to it. The Iranians probably have it over there. Who knows what they did with it? But it was really interesting. I spent about an hour and a half, sat down with one of the women who had taken hostages at the American, taken the American embassy hostage. It was a very interesting conversation. And she told what that was like to be one of the hostage takers. And one of the things she said was that, I asked about, what about the fact that they released them on the day Ronald Reagan took office, and that Ronald Reagan apparently asked about that. And what she said to me in the interview, which I thought was fascinating, was she said that if they had released the hostages before Jimmy Carter left office, that would have been Iran being a Soviet-aligned country. Isn't that interesting? That basically, she said the reason that they released the hostages, that Iran released the hostages on the day that Ronald Reagan took office, was to make clear that Iran was not a Soviet-aligned country. I thought that was an interesting answer. I didn't quite know, but apparently Jimmy Carter was favored by the Soviets, and Ronald Reagan was coming into office on a very anti-Soviet platform, right? Jimmy Carter had wanted détente with the Soviets. He had passed the SALT Treaty. So Iran wanted to make clear to the United States they were not Soviet aligned. So they didn't want to give that to Carter. It would have been a boost for Jimmy Carter if the hostages had been freed on his watch. So they made a point of not freeing the hostages on his watch to make clear that Iran was not a Soviet aligned country. Now, we also know Ronald Reagan actually contacted the Ayatollah, contacted Khomeini and said, could you do me a favor and not release the hostages? How is that not treason, by the way? A group of Americans are taken hostage in a foreign country. And the Ronald Reagan, who's supposed to be this great patriot, right? He's the great patriot, the shining city on a hill, right? Ronald Reagan says, hey, those Americans you're holding hostage, can you keep them? Keep them for a little bit. Don't let them go. No, hold off. Hold off. It'll help my career if you hold on to them for just a little bit longer. I mean, can you imagine that? I mean, you want to talk about lack of patriotism, right? I mean, that in and of itself, I mean, he should be thrown in jail for that. I mean, he basically had Americans that were being held hostage longer to benefit his political career. Now, you want to talk about foreign meddling. What's all this about collusion, right? Oh my God, Donald Trump might have talked to Russia one time or something. Like, Ronald Reagan colluded with the Ayatollahs to win the 1980 election, okay? He said to Khomeini, keep these people hostage so it will not help Jimmy Carter so that I will get elected. I mean, and there was no big scandal about it. There was no big, oh, Ronald Reagan colluded with the Ayatollahs, with the Iran. No one said anything. They were just like, yeah, whatever. He's Ronald Reagan. He's ultra patriotic. But anyway, I'm getting off topic here, right? You wanted me to answer the question about why do we fear China? The West is afraid of Russia and China working together. Why? But anyway, why is Iran getting closer to Russia and China? Because Iran tried to get closer to the United States. The president of Iran, you remember Ahmadinejad was the president of Iran. He was reelected, and then he was out of office. And then Ahmadinejad was defeated by Rouhani, and Rouhani came into office. And Rouhani was the reformist candidate. And Rouhani's entire platform was that Rouhani was going to negotiate with the United States. Rouhani was going to do the Iran nuclear deal with Barack Obama. And Ahmadinejad was this crazy radical, blah, blah, blah. But he was this good, this wholesome reformist who wasn't going to antagonize America. And I went to Iran under Rouhani's administration. And in the hotels in Iran, they said you can use dollars and you can use British pounds or Iranian currency, not rubles, not Chinese renminbi. I mean, it was like there was a big section of the Iranian government that was doing everything they could to pander to America, right? And the Iran nuclear deal happened, and Iran gave up a huge, like almost all of its nuclear energy program, gave it up, right? In exchange for the United States saying on paper that Iran had the right to have nuclear energy, and the USA lifting a bunch of sanctions. And almost immediately after the Iran nuclear deal was signed, the USA put more sanctions on Iran, which was like to cancel out the deal. And then you'll remember Donald Trump got elected, and he pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal, basically reimposed all the sanctions that were lifted as a result of it. And then the icing on the cake was Donald Trump murdered Qasem Soleimani, who was the national hero of Iran. Like the celebrity, the military hero, Qasem Soleimani, great anti-imperialist Qasem Soleimani, murdered him. Guy who'd protected Christians in Syria, guy who'd heroically fought ISIS. It was awful. And so Iran is like, wow, we tried to pivot toward better relations with America. The USA stabbed us in the back and murdered one of our top generals. And at that point, it just became clear that, Iran was saying, look, all right, the USA has sanctions on us like crazy. Russia and China will do business with us. Iran joins the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. It makes sense. I mean, America did this, right? I mean, under the Obama administration and, even under the Clinton administration. In the Clinton years and in the first year of Bush's presidency, Iran was drifting closer to the United States. And you'll remember George W. Bush, he was getting ready to invade Iraq. Iran hated Saddam Hussein, so you'd think that he would reach out to Iran and be like, hey, buddies, let's team up against Iraq together. No! Bush named Iran as one of the axis of evil. And so, of course, Ahmadinejad got elected in a huge sweep. And Iran moved in an anti-imperialist direction. And then, again, under Obama, Iran elected a reformist, right? Ahmadinejad, the hardliner, was out of office. And Javid Zarif was hanging out with John Kerry, and they were negotiating. And again, Iran was drifting close to the United States. And then what did the United States do? More sanctions, murder Qasem Soleimani. America will not allow itself to get closer to Iran because of Netanyahu. Look, I'll just be real with you, right? I think that the Brzezinski school, Obama, Biden, John Kerry, those guys want to get closer to Iran for their own reasons. They want Iran to be further away from Russia and China. They want to, have a color revolution in Iran. They want to boost the reformists in Iran to help dismantle the state-run economy of the Islamic Republic. That's what they want. However, Netanyahu will not allow that. Netanyahu has enough power that the Netanyahu wing of Israeli politics, the Likudniks, right? They need the Iranian threat. They're all about selling weapons across the Middle East. They are all about playing up the idea that Iran are a bunch of terrorists, that Iran is a big threat to Israel. Netanyahu and those folks, they won't let it happen. They need there to be conflict between Iran and the United States. And it's not all of Israel. Jamie. It's not all of Israel. There's a wing of Israel that was with Obama, right? I mean, there was a wing of Israel that there were a lot of Israeli generals who wrote a letter to Netanyahu and told him not to come to the United States to speak against the Iran nuclear deal. Doesn't matter. Israeli politics is heavily divided. The Likud, the Israeli right wing, and the Israeli, moderates or whatever, and the Israeli right wing, they need Iran to be the boogeyman. They need Iran to be the enemy. They're not interested in a long-term strategy of reformism in Iran, color revolution, destabilizing Iran. They're not interested in that. They just want to have a big arms race. They want to sell lots of weapons, and they want all the Israelis to be terrified of Iran and to be more threatened, and so they vote for them. And they want more money to go to the Israeli military-industrial complex. They want more settlements to brutalize the Palestinians. That's all they care about, right? The Likudniks, the Likud wing of Israel, they will not have peace with Iran because their hustle is everyone be afraid of Iran. And if things improve with Iran, if there's detente, then their hustle is up. The jig is up, right? Doesn't work, right? If Iran was being, was friends with America, was friends with all of its neighbors, then they'd be screwed, right? Then they wouldn't be able to scare everyone to vote for them. Sheldon Adelson, who was one of Trump's primary financial backers, one of his big supporters, huge Likudnik, right-wing Israeli, right? That's just how it works, right? And that, and this is a case where I think overall imperialism, they want to do to Iran what they did to the Soviet Union. Get close, slip their forces in there, support the reformists, gradually, gradually create unrest and division. It worked in Libya, right? Gaddafi sucked up to the United States. Obama and Gaddafi were friends. Obama agreed for the guy in Libya, the guy in Britain who was the Lockerbie bomber, to be sent back. And Libya and the United States were getting closer and closer and closer. And Obama was slipping all kinds of American NGOs into Libya and all of that. Then the Arab Spring happened and they got rid of Libya. And that's what they want to do with Iran, right? That's what they want to do. That's what Obama and all of them want to do. They want to slip all their forces into Iran. America and Iran will be getting really close, best friends forever. And then the next time, something happens, they'll be able to overthrow the government, right? That's what they want to do. They want to have a color revolution in Iran. And Netanyahu doesn't give a fuck about that. He just wants to make lots of money, lots and lots of money, selling weapons all over the Middle East. And so there's a division, and the short-term interests of Likud and of the weapons manufacturers go in the face of the long-term strategic interests of U.S. imperialism. So you know what? I was neutral on the Iran deal. When I was in Iran many, many times, I was asked by Iranians, should the USA sign the deal? I always said, I don't know. That was my position. I never said they should. I said, I don't know. I said, that is up to Iran. And when it happened, I said, well, this is a big deal. And it was a big deal. The USA acknowledged, after years and years of saying that Iran was somehow doing something wrong by having peaceful nuclear energy. Then you'll notice, right? You'll notice that after all of that, then there was an agreement, that recognized that Iran had the right to nuclear energy. That was a victory. So, I mean, but the Iran nuclear deal, it barely happened. I mean, like almost immediately after it was signed, it fell apart. So there you go. All right. The long telegram. Keenan, I know nothing about that, about Keenan and the long telegram. I know about Brzezinski in the late Cold War, but I don't know enough. I mean, you're asking me about technology. I mean, I'm going to Google it. I'll Google it. A long telegram Keenan, right? What are we talking about here? George Keenan's long telegram. Okay. All right. I just don't know enough about that. I just don't know enough about it. I haven't studied that. I can't comment on that. So there you go. I mean, it's a big deal. It looks like something I should know about. So there you go. Someone's asking me about Ukraine attack on Belgorod, Freedom of Russia Legion. Look, Ukraine is going to lose. Everyone knows they're going to lose. And what the West is doing, the West is just prolonging this conflict. They will not let it end, right? I mean, the rate, I was listening today about the amount of weapons that Ukraine is using. It's ridiculous. And it's insane. And Ukraine is going to lose. And everyone knows that Ukraine is going to lose, right? And why can't we negotiate, right? Why is there not a negotiation to respect the peoples of the Donbass? This is an awful situation. NATO is dragging it out because they want to hurt Russia. That's all that's going on here. They don't care about Ukrainians. America is a black widow. They sweetheart you and then they kill you. Yeah, sounds about right. Sounds about right, John. Sounds about right. All right. And then the last question I have here is why do we fear China? The West is afraid of Russia and China working together. Why? I remember being told China is going to take over the USA. Well, really, Gabby, what it gets down to is that when Russia was poor in the 90s, the world had to buy its oil and gas from us. Then Russia got stronger by building up their oil and gas industries. And now many countries around the world buy their oil and gas from Russia. Russia is a competitor. China is dirt poor. It used to be a dirt poor country. Now it's the second largest economy in the world. And people that used to have to buy their cell phones from us buy them from Huawei. People who used to have to buy their steel from us buy them from, buy it from Chinese companies. They make half the steel in the world. It's a competitor. They don't want competition. And at the end of the day, Russia and China working together is great. And we should be working together with Russia and China. China's gains could be our gains. The economy of the United States, if it was rational, would benefit from China's success, right? We could team up with China and America could get richer while China gets richer. Russia could get richer if we worked together. But the way our economy is set up, it is run by big banks and ultra monopolies. People like Jeff Bezos, people like Bill Gates, and they see the only way they can stay on top of the world is making sure the rest of the world stays poor. And so they have an oligarchical perspective. They are positioned as financiers, big bankers that dominate the economy. And when countries like Russia and China that used to be poor become rich, that is a threat to their monopoly. And right now they are making America poorer. And if we had a socialist economy, China could get wealthier and America could get wealthier and Russia could get wealthier. All together, we could all work together. And that would be in our interest. But right now, we don't have that. We have imperialism, a global system of monopoly capitalism where huge multinational corporations dominate the global economy and hold back economic development. They keep the world poor and make the world poorer in order to enrich themselves. It is in America's interest to work with Russia and China. It is in the interest of the American people to do that. But we are run by a big group of international bankers and ultra-rich monopolists who are making this country poor and making the world poor. And they try to tell us that their interests are our interests, and they are not. Our interests are against them. Our interest is teaming up with Russia and China and standing in solidarity with them against the Wall Street imperialists. The working people of the Western countries must join arm in arm with the people of the world to defeat the imperialists. The global system of monopoly capitalism, imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism, must be defeated. And we must have a new order based on win-win cooperation, countries trading with each other. It is in American working people's interest to stand and do and have a better relationship with China and Russia. And on that note, folks, I'm tired and I have to go to bed. It's late, but we'll see. I might be back tomorrow night, might not. See how the day goes. 8 days in a row. Maybe we'll make it 9. This is great. What we do here is great. It's amazing. You all are great. Go and buy my new book if you haven't bought it. A lot of stuff in here. A lot of great events coming up. Join the Center for Political Innovation. I'm going to say good night. In the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.